Hi everyone, Lisa here. Today I'm joined by a very good friend, Cindy Cheung. Cindy will be sharing her divorce journey. We're going to talk a lot. Before that, I want to introduce you to Cindy. So Cindy is a professor at Conestoga College School of Business in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, where she shares her expertise in the insurance program and mentor the next generation of insurance industry leaders. Outside of the classroom, you'll find Cindy working out with her professional trainer because she believes a healthy body is key to healthy mind. She thrives on meeting new people and getting to know their stories, soaking up their wisdom, whether at a social gathering or professional networking events. She's also a proud single mom to two incredible young women. Her love for learning never stops, which is why she's embarking on a new journey next month to pursue a Master's of Education at the Queen's University. Exciting times. Hello, Cindy.
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Lovely background, which matches your dress. Cindy and I used to work at an insurance company a long time ago. We actually didn't work together. What connected us as our divorce journey. I shared a post on LinkedIn and Cindy reached out. So we reconnected just about less than a year ago and
Yeah,
truly
it was like
connected.
last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and that was
Yeah.
lovely. It was just the universe putting us together somehow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We will talk about that too, that our divorce journey is also an opportunity to open ourselves up to new possibilities and relationships. Tell us a little bit, how did your divorce unfold?
Oh my
How long were
goodness.
you married? And
I feel like that is such a long story. This is what happens when I have been married, or I was married for almost 20 years. And I had known my ex-husband for nearly half my lifetime, so it was over 20 something years that we were together. And how it unfolded was probably quite a surprise for me and many other people, simply because I did not see it coming. I'm sure a lot of others in my situation will say the same thing. It's like we didn't see it coming. I think a part of that is probably because we get so absorbed in our own life, in what we have to do, and it becomes a grind and a routine that we don't get a chance to stop. It's almost like I kind of think about that, the 20 years, like it being on a bullet train where you're going somewhere and it's a long journey. You're going fast, but you don't remember passing by any of the scenery. And it kind of felt that way to me. So when it all halted and it was time to get off this bullet train, I actually had no memory of where I was going. Was there a destination? And did I pack
mm,
the right thing? Do I have the right? There wasn't anything. Like, you just kind of got off on a platform and we're just told this is it. This is the end of the journey. And you had no idea how you got there. So I want to say that I did not see my divorce coming. This is all in retrospect. Yes, I can pinpoint all the different stations and different signs that led to, I guess, that destination, if you want to call it that. But I didn't know it at the time. So how it unfolded was just very much surprising, out of the blue. My husband came home one day and said he didn't want to be married anymore to me, and that it was time to do something different with his life. So it was almost like we're getting off at the next station, but I'm connecting to a different train. So you're moving on in a different direction. So it was like we were
mm,
off the same train, but taking different ones to continue. And I kind of look at it that way now, even. So I think, like most people, you don't really expect it. You try to make sense of it. And I'm still trying to make sense of it, even though it's been over 4 years since then.
mm-hmm. I can so relate. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can too. And I love that
Mhm.
metaphor of being a bullet train, because like when you have kids and your kids have school, you have both of you
Yeah.
are building your careers, and you just like the speed is fast and the logistical side of things is like, and
You just miss
yeah,
you just miss a lot. Yeah, you missed a
yeah,
lot.
and we never check in with each other, right? Like, how long were you married? More than 20 years, you said?
We were married for, it would have been our 20-year anniversary in 2020. Yeah, because we got married in 2000. And it was just
Wow.
very ironically, I was planning a 20-year anniversary, wedding anniversary destination, and that was never happening.
So tell us about the shock factor because I know I had a similar experience and I
Yeah.
thought we were on the same page. We were building this beautiful life, we were
Hmm.
welcoming our second daughter. And the vision I had of the next at least 2
Yeah.
years or 3 years clearly was different than him.
Yeah.
I had no clue, no idea until someone like he came to me, is like, I don't want to be married to you. And I was like, what? And
Yeah.
and that
I
was
think at first, I think at first it was very, very shocking because it wasn't as if there were signs leading up to it, and I felt that divorce was going to be that was going to be the solution, that we would end up parting our ways. Very much like you, because I wasn't prepared for it, and maybe that was a part of the fact that I couldn't see outside of the peripheral. What I imagined our life was going to be like. And then I had always imagined that is that we would grow old together because our children were already turning into young adults and we had been married for 20 years. So then I saw further, like for you, you said, I saw the next 2 years, what it would look like. I actually saw something further. For me, it was, well, we had already purchased our retirement property even. So we talked about a lot of long term into our old age and retirement. So there was a lot of those plans. And then that really changed. So I think I wasn't prepared for that because I had such a longer outlook. And it was almost
right.
like I already finished writing our story for us, right? And now I have to go back to change all of
Mm-hmm.
that. That's the choose your own adventure story. That was not going to be my adventure anymore, and nor was it going to be his. So I
And
think that the shock factor was there. And even if I look back to that day and I think of how was I feeling at the time, it was like an maybe most people can say the same thing. It's like it's an out of body experience where you are
yes.
standing and you're actually watching yourself through this whole transaction, this whole conversation. It was like watching a movie. I still look back at it to see it that way as if I was watching a movie because I don't think I was fully physically, mentally present there.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
you want in your body, you came out of it, and a
Mhm.
lot of that is introspection. Now looking at the time
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
You're adding your experience now. So after
For
that
sure.
shock, I know your story a little bit, and you were in corporate, and this
Yeah.
happened, and COVID hit. A lot of things happened.
I guess, yeah. So if we're talking
Yes.
about 2020, everybody has a story, their own
Yeah.
story for 2020. Most of it is swirling around COVID. And I think a lot of people like myself and yourself, we found ourselves in situations that were very pivotal and very impactful, big changes in that year, not just because of work from home or because we lost our job, but everything that you could think possibly could have collapsed or imploded and got swallowed up into a pit happened to me in 2020 because in January of 2020 I had started my new job at a company, and when he came home a week later after I started this new job, he had announced that he wanted a divorce. And then within about a month after that announcement, we had already sold our family home. So our family home and my children's childhood home was already sold, and I was already
Within
moving.
how long again?
This
You
was
said.
within the month because, well, if I have to step back. So I think
Okay.
what happened here is, and I haven't shared it, and this is all in retrospect because at the moment I had no idea that he had already planned to have a divorce. He had already planned to leave me. I was the last person to know. He talked to prior to telling me in the new year. So this was before Christmas, the last Christmas, he had already spoken to his whole family about leaving me. And he talked to everybody except,
Wow.
yes, that's right. So I should have been the first person to know, but I was the last person to know. Meanwhile, he was, packing his parachute, or I was kind of left in the dark. He had, in retrospect, he had convinced me to sell our family home because we were going to downsize. We had a vacation property already. That was our long-term retirement plan. And so I thought selling our family home was a part of that plan, but I think it was a part of his divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even before then, he admitted that prior to announcing he wanted a divorce with me, he had already consulted 3 different divorce lawyers. So he
Wow.
was already researching, and I was very disappointed, and I felt very betrayed, and I think that's very normal because if I've been your life partner for nearly half my life, like
20
20 something
years.
years
Yeah.
of my life, right? I thought I deserved more in how you go about breaking up with me. I mean, I've had people in high school that broke up with me in much more classy ways than that. I absolutely this was
Yeah.
a low blow. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow. And so that came crashing in, my job, COVID, having to sell the family home.
It's
When
hard.
if I had known, yeah, and I think everything was just, I felt I was put into a very in an unfair playing field, if you want to call it that. Even now when I talk about it, it still makes me very like angry. So I still have that
Yeah.
anger that was tied to that memory. I think of how, like, why would you treat somebody that is, first of all, somebody that you've been with half your life and the mother of your children? I thought I deserved a better setup than that, maybe better support. And that was probably the naive part in me, thinking that when you're going through a divorce with that person, that they would be looking out for you. So yeah, a lot of it was just a very big shock, but it just also kept rippling. That shock just kept rippling for quite a bit.
Yeah. Like when you go through the legal process and the injustice through all this, right? And talking
Yeah,
about fair or not fair. And also
yeah.
ultimately is the disrespect aspect of it. Um,
Exactly. Oh no, that's why when people who do not understand or did not know that that's how it ended for me, when they hear it from his side, they think that it's very amicable. I thought to myself, there's nothing amicable about driving your wife of 20 years or somebody that you've been a partner with for 20 something years to a dark parking lot and then announcing you didn't want to be married anymore. To me, that's just the
how
worst
it
way to be
felt.
disrespected and the worst way to be treated. But nobody knows that that was my experience that night. Nobody knows how he went about planning the whole thing. It was just very manipulative on his end. He wanted to see how it was going to unfold. He wanted to control the outcome, and I had no idea any of that, right? So when people say, "Oh, it's quite amicable. I see you guys get along, and he's such a great dad, and he does so much, and he's so supportive of you, and et cetera, et cetera," it actually makes me angrier. Like even thinking about it right now, because I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he deserves that. I don't think he deserves people looking at him that way. I think it's a misrepresentation, and it really
Mm-hmm.
pisses me off.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Right? This
Yeah,
kind of emotion, it's okay. We the awareness of us acknowledging that, oh wow, I'm still angry
yeah,
about this. Right.
yes.
It's
Yeah,
okay. It's okay.
and to be honest, I know it sounds terrible. I think it was that anger that probably gave me the strength and the energy to do what I had to do
I
versus
love that.
the yeah, versus the other way. And whether it's energy coming from anger or coming from love or coming from fear, it pushed me in a way that felt very positive for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because I was holding on to the bitterness. I think I was holding on to something that was challenging me, where I had no idea that I was going to get thrown out of an airplane and you've already packed your parachute. So I guess I'll make mine on the way down. I think it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
really was. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was that where I thought, wow, this is great. Well, you know what? I can't just roll in and just take what
Yeah.
you have given me. I need to build something and become better. And I think it was
Better.
that
Yeah.
better. I
And
think it was that anger
stronger. Yeah.
yeah. I think it was that anger
I know.
that was more challenging. It was like, oh, okay, I see. Challenge accepted. Well, I'm going to come out of this. I don't think it's going to be easy. But there was other things too. Like I had 2 children that depended on me.
Yeah.
And to me, it was like, okay, well, I need a home. I need to build all of this for us. I think a lot of that was what really drove me to kind of continue with that. It still does in a way today when I think back.
Yeah.
I don't,
I can feel
yeah,
from your
yeah.
energy. And I love what
I
you're
probably
saying
feel
is
it right now
that,
going through.
yeah.
Yeah.
So so that emotions. We all have emotions.
Yeah.
It's within our power to decide, are we channeling the emotions to something positive, or
Yeah.
are we going to just like, right? And let that emotions to be controlling us or directing us. So it's really within our power to do that. I love what
Yeah.
you said is that he was already prepared, his parachute or everything, but you were knitting your parachute as you go, which is
Yeah.
obviously challenging because you didn't
Yeah.
know, you weren't prepared. But
Yeah.
what a great attitude. You said, oh, challenge accepted, even though despite all the injustice or shock and betrayal on multiple levels,
Yes.
and I can tell, and
Mhm.
still, like, what's the other way? What's the other
Yeah.
option, right? It's how I see it. We have a lot
You're
of
right.
parallel in our stories, maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
My kids were younger, I was pregnant, but a similar
Yeah.
story. I was checking in with my son. Actually, I'm digressing a little bit. I was like, oh, how are you doing? He was like, I think we're thriving, Mom. And he said, I'm really enjoying life. Just some background. My kids are with me, like you, 100% of the time,
Yeah.
which can be challenging, a lot emotionally and also logistically. One thing I remember telling my son, who was 5, 6 at the time, because we were all baffled. We were like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, this is what's happening, right? When
Yeah.
we were told, we didn't know what's going on, is that I told him, I remember I was like, hey, honey, I said, not only will we survive this, we will thrive. We'll be thriving. I think I didn't know how at the time, but that really stuck with him. Now almost oh my God, 4 years. Our timeline is also very
Yeah.
similar.
Totally very
4 years
similar.
later, I mean, I think we are just hearing that, because I question sometimes, like, are we thriving? Are we? But hearing that from the validation from the kid is like, okay, I'm doing something right, even though I was like knitting that parachute, trying to survive, coming down. I don't know what's
I'm
the
sure.
speed.
I'm sure you
you know?
have it. I'm pretty sure I just took off my dress and held it. Like, it was
um,
going down. And a lot of times, like, and I have now encountered a lot of people where when they talk about their divorce journey, how it happened, what they went through, and I can see that they're not thriving as well, or they are still working through what they went through. I will admit, for anybody that's listening to this, and your journey, like mine and like Lisa's and everybody else's, it's not easy. It's all difficult in its own way. You internalize those challenges differently, and you navigate through them differently. But you're right, Lisa, and I agree that it comes down to choice. So what do
mhm.
you choose when you are presented with, and it's hard because all those choices are not easy choices. So it's like picking the best of the worst, right? So we had to do many difficult things, and through it all, we kept thinking, like, this is going to be better. It's going to be better, and we have to make it better, because you're right, that is the best choice. It's not lay down and die from this. We have to keep going. There's other people that depend on us. That was the kind of
Yeah.
energy that I was leaning on. I think that's what gave me strength, which was, for me, I thought, well, I felt like a complete loser, first of all, because I thought that I was put together enough to be able to keep my family together, keep my marriage together, keep all of that together. So when you are no longer going to be married and you're in a divorce situation, there's a sense of failure. I
Yeah.
had to stop thinking about it as a failure. It took me a long time to tell my entire family about it, because when he explained that to me, that he wanted to be divorced, I had to process it for almost a week before we decided together to tell the kids, and then before I could announce it to the rest of my family. And I have a huge extended family,
Mhm.
and culturally, nobody in my
Yeah.
family, no, I don't think anybody in my culture even divorces. They just put up with each other till death
Yeah.
do us part.
Also another commonality, the Chinese background here. Yeah, it's like it's a
There's a lot of
shame, a
people.
lot of
It is.
baggage
It's
attached to.
closure.
I'm the
It
first
is.
one in my family who got divorced, and I still haven't told my large extended family back in China, because it just even
Yeah.
explaining the
The concept.
multitude of things is like,
Yeah,
what?
because people are always looking for, and they still do. People always want to look for a reason why the marriage didn't
Why?
work out.
Yeah.
Why? If the question is,
And
it's like a lot of 5-year-olds asking you, but why? And I want to know too, because when you told me
yes,
I want to know. I want to be like,
enlighten me, please.
why are we having a divorce? I remember specifically asking for that. That question was, okay, so you don't want to be married to me anymore. Why? How come? Explain to me. Give me some reasons, right? Because you start to internalize that you failed somewhere, that you're not good enough for them to want to
Yeah,
stay with you
yeah,
anymore.
I'm not
And
a good wife. Maybe,
yes,
I didn't do A, B, C, D, E. I wasn't understanding, wasn't supporting.
exactly.
I don't know. I wasn't there whenever he wanted sex. I don't know. Whatever that is, maybe
I
I
know.
put too much effort on the kids and not enough on him. And you start to
Yes.
go
For what
ruminating
reason?
and
What is
search
it?
questions, right? Search
And you know
answers of
what?
like why. Yeah.
And this is where I also learned is that some people don't know what they want, but they're pretty clear with what they don't want. So
So true.
the why is not because he was able to say to me, "Oh, because you didn't do A, B, C, and D." It wasn't any of that. It was his heart and his mind and his body didn't want to be in that marriage, in that relationship. Did he explore that? Probably not. And that's again, maybe because he's lacking that self awareness. I don't know. But he didn't have an answer for why he didn't want to be married other than he was unhappy. And unhappy is
Yeah.
just very vague, right?
Yeah.
Unhappy is a symptom of stuff, of A, B, C, and D. But he couldn't name any of that. So he couldn't give me an answer. To be honest, he didn't even answer me. He just said, just shook his head. I thought, okay, well, maybe he doesn't want to talk about this. Maybe one day he will write me a letter or an email. And I have been waiting for that letter and email, and it's been over 4 years.
Great point. So a lot of people I talk to and myself as well spend a lot of
Mhm.
time, especially when there was an infidelity involved. And in my case, really cutting off with the kids, abandonment involved. Okay, look at my
Yeah.
bookshelf here. I read so many, like one level was about affairs and one level was about like, family relationships. Anyways,
Okay.
so, and I read so much and I was like joining coaching groups myself as participants and
Yeah.
just trying to figure out the answer until I realized, oh my God, Lisa, it's not your job to figure out why he made his choices.
Exactly.
And that was like, bam, okay, now I can focus on myself and I
Yeah.
need to. And that's where things really start to change. So
Yeah.
was there a moment like this for you to be like, oh my God, like aha
Yeah.
moments
There
like this,
was.
or was it
So
gradual?
it was probably as soon as I started, um, when I asked him, that was the first person to ask that question, and he didn't give me an answer. I thought it was just maybe more a timing. He didn't know how to articulate it at the time, didn't want to talk about it yet, because again, I was being considerate, right? The where it really fell on me, and it was more of a realization, was after I had announced to my family, and I had to tell everybody at the same time. This probably was not the best way to tell my family, but I wanted to make sure that everybody got the same message and everybody understood.
Mm-hmm.
I did a
Mm-hmm.
family email.
Okay.
I composed an email and I explained what is going on right now with my marriage, where we're at. And I remember in it saying that this was not the news that I wanted to share with the family, and this was not how I wanted to share it, but this is the best way that everybody will get the news at the same time. I mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
my ex-husband and I are going through a divorce process. This is all very surprising for me, and I am working through it. I don't have the answers to anything at this time. I just
Mm-hmm.
know that there are things that I need to take care of. In my communication, I specifically said that I don't have the answers. I also indicated that I don't feel that this is a failure, like a reflection of a failure for either of us. I don't look at it as if my marriage or my relationship has failed. I had to look at it as if it's evolved, and the evolving of this relationship could mean that we go in separate paths, but we have evolved into individuals where we're no longer sharing the same path or the same goals or the same journey anymore. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I did say in my email that I wanted to take care of myself and my kids, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to continue to thrive. That I remember saying that. And
You and
then
me thriving.
it was.
Yeah.
And then I remember every time I would bump into a friend or somebody, I always have to say, "Oh, we're not together anymore," and I would say, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard." So this is something that you have to relive all the time. Some people ask a lot of questions because they're confused. To them, it's the same thing. Well, yeah,
It's a
it's come out of
shock.
the blue.
Yeah.
It's shocking to
Yeah.
them too, and they want an
Yeah.
answer. And
Yeah.
I remember people asking me all the time, "Oh, well, what happened? Did you know this was happening?" And I wanted to say I don't have the answer, but if you ever talk to him and he gives you an answer, please let me know. And even
Call
today,
me when he shares with
yeah,
you.
it's really true because they'll say, "Oh, well, what happened? You guys, you seem like good parents. You get along."
Hmm.
Externally, whatever you see is not necessarily what people are feeling inside, right? And like constant being asked and constantly having to tell people that I'm now divorced from my ex-husband. I don't know why we're divorced.
Yeah. That's
And
why it's such a journey that it's an emotional toll because first of all you're
yeah,
shocked, right? Maybe
yeah,
you're on the other side to telling your spouse you wanted to leave, but still that's you're going through a lot of internal battles, and then you going through this legal process, which is
yeah,
extremely stressful. At the same time, you're
it is.
carrying the burdens and questions from others, and
Yeah,
which you don't have the answer as you are still navigating this new territory. I just want
yeah,
to thank you for sharing and pointing something out is that how you approach this with such maturity and grace and vulnerability and choose during a time when it's so uncertain. I don't believe in bashing our ex at all because I believe we all have our journey. But compared
hmm,
to how he approached it, and you really approached this, even though you were in such shock and with so much
yeah,
grace. I just want to point that out. And enough about him. Let's forget
yeah,
about him. So I want to ask how you can went from in that space, right? Not doing well in
yeah,
your career, there was some shock there, and then this big change, a lot of changes during COVID, with all of the shocks to coming out of this divorce, going
yeah,
into a completely different career path, having your
yeah,
own consulting business, become a teacher and professor, and then just really when we chatted, just this beam of light, and then I can feel it, right? How did you got yourself out of that dark place?
yeah,
And when you
dark
were
place.
like jumping out of no, when you were dumped out of an
Yeah, when I got
airplane
ejected
in
from
the
the
yeah, yeah, so it's like out of here.
I got ejected,
What are
and
some yeah
they thought, "Do you still have your parachute on?" I will have to say, in 2020, you're right. So I started a new job and then sold my family home, and then COVID happened a couple months after I started my new job, and then a couple months after that, I got fired from my new job. Sold my second home. Yeah, so in 2020 I could have dumped that into the garbage and redid that entire year because I can't imagine anything else I could have got dumped on me that year. And you're right, like how do we get through this? Because every time it was like, oh gosh, the divorce, oh my gosh, it's COVID, now we're all locked down, oh my goodness, you got fired from your job too, now you're selling your house and other homes. In the span of 18 months I moved 3 times. I remember how I said it felt like I was watching a movie. Every
mm-hmm,
time something drastic like that happened, was like watching a movie. I was outside of my body. One of the
mm-hmm.
things that I remember saying over and over to myself, and that has always been maybe my mantra, is like, the words were, "It's going to be okay. You're going to be just fine."
Mm,
I remember sitting on my porch the day that so being divorced and moving, that whole process, it can be numbing and distracting because you're so busy packing and everything else that has to go
logistically.
along with it. Yeah, but then
Mm-hmm.
being fired and coming home, and
Mm-hmm.
this was during COVID, sitting on my porch outside. I hadn't even told my kids yet, and I'm sitting there, and I remember I kept saying to myself, "You're gonna be okay." In a way, I didn't have that same fear that I had before. I think it was because I asked myself, 10 years from now, if you could come and stand in front of yourself sitting on this porch, what would you say? I thought to myself, you know what? I would tell myself, you're going to be just fine because you don't know it yet, but you are going to draw strength. You're going to learn. You're going to have this level of wisdom. I wanted to say to myself then, like 10 years from my 10-year self from now, talking to my 10-year later self, I wanted to say, I would bet on you any day. When I told myself that I would always bet on myself, that's where I knew I had to win for myself because I was betting on myself. And that meant that I believed in myself. So
Yeah.
that's what I told myself on the porch. It's this out of body experience. And I know it sounds like very weirdly spiritual, but it was. It was, you're going to be fine. And I would bet on you any day. And you know what? When I reflect back, I don't really count my laurels, or I don't look at this as accomplishing, awards and trophies.
Mhm.
I think of the things that were important to me, how I wanted to have results. So I saw I envisioned my results, and I worked backwards on how I could get there. The most important thing for me was looking after myself and my kids, and rebuilding our home again. That's all I
Mhm.
focused on. I didn't know what
So
that
you had
meant,
a
but
vision. You had a vision.
I did. And my vision also required me to have no fear. And I know that sounds unrealistic. Like we always have some type of fear. I had a lot of fear, but I still had to brave through it. So for me, it was really I I ended up buying a house, or not even buying a house. I ended up buying an empty piece of land, believe it or not. I envisioned on that land what my house was going to look like. I worked with a custom builder to build my house and how I was going to live in it with my kids. That's what I envisioned. When I thought about getting a job because I had lost my job, I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to start applying. Like I went back to doing and wanted to do what I always did because I was comfortable with it, but I didn't feel happy about doing it. So this is where those things started to change for me. Things that I would have done before because I was married, I stopped doing. Not out of
Yeah.
spite, but because it wasn't working for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that,
If you, yeah,
yeah,
if it doesn't work for you, why you keep doing the same thing? So a divorce can really be a catalyst of big
it is.
changes and to really pursue what you
Yeah,
want, what you
yeah,
always desired and never did. Take some risk, try a different career, or just
yeah.
doing things for you. It's a game changer.
I think maybe the building a home from a flat piece of land to this house that I have now, which is actually a home with heart and love, has been like a metaphoric journey for me.
Mhm.
Now, when I see that I was able to do that, there's nothing stopping me from wanting to build anything, even if it started with a flat piece of land. Like I built my
Yeah.
business and my whole consulting gig work. I built it around that as well, knowing that, hey, I could do really well or not do really well, but I'm gonna be okay because I'm always gonna
Mhm.
bet on myself.
I love that. I'm always going to bet on myself and the concept of a home. I think when
Yeah,
divorce happened, and for myself too, question is, where is home? Where is home?
yeah,
As I work with my clients on their journey, and this journey is really your homecoming.
yeah,
You are making that happen yourself with a vision, with some goals, with some clarity. You don't always get that right away, but it's
yeah,
so important if you wanted to not get stuck in that just merely
yeah.
surviving space, and you have
Right.
to take some risks, so to speak, calculated risks. And I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for sharing. We talked about logistic side of things and envisioning self, actually two key aspects. What about mental well-being? Because now, and people are going to say, oh, it's easy for you to say I just made that decision, but it can be easy when you got let go from your job. That's hard on our sense of self, right? Just
Yeah.
got, to some degree, got let go from your marriage, and
It's been a very
and then
lovely one.
on top of that, like, you are fired from our marriage. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. And there is no this compensation as well. You have to pay
Yeah.
lawyers to deal with that. On top of that, you have to sell your matrimonial home, right? Your second home you were going to retire into. I think
Yeah.
most importantly is that vision you had for your next 20, 30 years, because your kids were growing up, right? You were about to
Yeah.
downsize, like really
Yeah.
relax into this life, and didn't
Mhm.
happen. Tell me about the mental shift, mental well-being. How did you get yourself from that place of maybe depression or shock to this place of I'm betting on myself.
Yeah. I think for me, and I'm trying to reflect back on that as well too. There was probably moments where I would, and I think this is normal. I mean, you have those moments where you're very happy with your progress in what you're working towards. And those other moments where it feels really hard and you start to feel bitter because you're like, why am I in this now? Right. Like if I,
Yeah.
and a lot of the bitterness came around the fact that why am I putting together a parachute as I'm like being ejected out of the airplane? Like why, how come I didn't have a better advantage? Right. And the bitterness would set in. Sometimes it was more like, wow, he had such a great plan. He already knew what he wanted. He already prepared. He already had plan B, C, D, E, and I had none of that. It
Yeah.
just felt really unsteady. And so
Yeah.
then it felt harder and harder. And you're right, those were the moments where it like mentally to try and push through that was really tough because you just want to hang on to that bitterness. And where it wasn't serving me was it affected my relationship with my kids.
Mm.
Because I'm here busy trying to build an empire, build my capital.
Yeah. Hmm.
I lost sight of the fact that I also needed to rebuild my children, like their souls, their heart.
Yeah.
And I thought like building a home was most important. We just try to get back to, because we had a house before, let's get back into a house, right? I thought that all of these in my mind, I just thought if I just replace everything that was pulled away from us, that we would be okay again. But
Yeah.
I had to stop and realize that my children were experiencing the divorce and the breakup of the family. They were experiencing it differently with different emotions, with different fears. I didn't take the time to acknowledge that. So I do commend you when you talk about how much you're spending time with your kids, working through that and recognizing and acknowledging their emotions and their journey, which was something I didn't have time to do. And so
Not at the very
that's
beginning, though.
not at the
Yeah.
beginning.
No.
No.
So I just wanted to jump in. Thank you for sharing that. Whoever, if you're in the thick of the divorce journey, right, whether
Yeah.
you, which side you are, because it can't be easy on either side, whether you are the one who decides to leave, or maybe you commonly agree that maybe you were left, quote unquote.
Yes.
That initial stage for everyone is different because we all receive information, digest information different.
Mhm.
I didn't have any capacity to really pay attention to my son's well-being at the time I was pregnant, right? For me, it's even long after the having a newborn, the sleepless nights, just like getting into that routine. I would say for me, it was a year and a half maybe, and while I was still dealing with the divorce things.
Mhm.
And it's okay when you're in that state. You can't be 100% tendering everyone because you need to feel safe with yourself. You need to find your safety net somehow. You need
Yes.
to grapple on something, whatever that is, and it's okay. Your kids will be okay. As we were, me too, because I was like, my top priority is keeping the kids in matrimonial home. I was like fighting so hard on that and trying to fill this void of like, oh my God, we can't lose more, right? We've already lost so
Yes.
much. So
Yeah.
it's totally okay that you're not tendering everything. It's something I wanted to put it out there because
Yeah.
you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can
Mhm.
help your kids.
Yeah.
And
And I
that's
think that's
key.
what I was doing. Yeah. And you're right. You're one person trying to do so much and trying to keep everything together. And at the same time, the way that I look at it is like, okay, so here is somebody that showed up and announced that he didn't want to be a part of this anymore. He just leaves. So I'm left with, when you pull apart the family like that, I'm left with pulling it back together. You pull apart who I am, and I'm no longer identified as your wife, your relationship, and that's pulled apart, and you have to rebuild that again. Your children are absolutely affected by it emotionally and in many different ways, right? That got pulled apart, and you got to put that back together again. My relationship with my children just got so strained that again got ripped apart and I had to rebuild that. So everything had to be rebuilt, and you're trying to rebuild too many things at the same time
At the
as
same
one
time.
person.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So this is, if we're using that airplane metaphor, you are trying to put together every single airplane part while putting together parachutes for you and everybody else that's falling out of the plane. It was maddening, and I don't even know how I sustained it. I only saw myself going through it, but I probably about a couple years later, I was gaining perspective from other people that watched me in this mess navigating it, and the way that they projected it, they saw a lot of people felt bad for me, which I had no idea they did. A lot of people thought she was working so hard, which I didn't feel like I was because I was in it at the time. Everybody kind of thought, wow, she's not enjoying her life. She's just working so hard. She's building everything. They were concerned for me. I had no idea I was projecting that, and that they were seeing this in me. Meanwhile, I thought I was thriving. One of the things that I really hung on to was the sense of freedom that I got by being a single person making single decisions. I don't know how to express it other than there's a word called liberosis, and it's just this sense of being untethered. You're not locked down by anything, and you're your own boss. And that was the best feeling ever when I started to acknowledge that from this day forth, decisions that I make are all going to be because it's what I want. So how do I want to see my life play out? What do I want to do? And I would test out some things. Like one day I decided to have popcorn for dinner.
Liberation. Who cares?
Yeah, it was. The one day I decided, I was like, you know what? I don't have to cook for anybody. You know what I want for dinner? I'm going to have a bag of popcorn, and that's enough. I know it sounds so bizarre, but it was testing these small senses of
Baby
freedom,
steps, sense of self too.
Who is going to come and tell me I can't have popcorn for dinner, right? Who?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
I'm my own boss, right? And so when it started with that decision on popcorn, it kind of moved to, I don't have to go back to working for a corporate if I don't want to. Maybe I don't need to work. Maybe I will think about what I want to be when I grow up. Maybe I'll take the whole summer off. And no one was there to tell me no. I didn't have a spouse that was there to put pressure on me to make a decision based on what they wanted. And that was very liberating.
I love that you talk about this going through divorce, coupled with all of the other losses, right? Your houses, your bank account, right? Your parenting relationship comes with this loss of identity, because it's always John and Mary, right? Together, right? I am someone's wife, right?
Yes.
And that identity got just broken down, whether you want it or not.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But it's also a phenomenal opportunity for us to find ourselves again without all that attachment, without an employee in your case, right? Someone's wife, or a BCDE, or a wife who always have a delicious meal prepared when her husband walks into the door, whatever. And that is, it's a precious opportunity, because for any healthy and thriving intimate relationship, we have to know who we are first before we can build that intimate partnership together. There is so much power coming from that. And even just time being with myself, right? At the beginning, you don't get used to it, because it's like, I remember when I went to the grocery store, even when he moved out, very shortly after he announced, I don't want to be married anymore. I still would see items. I was like, he would like that. It's a habit. I would buy that. It took me a long time. It was like, I do not like that food. My kids don't eat that. I do not have to buy that. Like small things, all of your pattern, behavior, right? Like you always think about the other person. It took some time. But once you do that, and then now I have all this space, like I don't have to plan, I can make all the decisions just by myself, where to travel, what to do, the kids' schedule, but also how do I spend my morning? If I wanted to meditate, journal, I have no one bothers me at the nighttime as well. And there is so much freedom and liberation and power in that. But a lot of people I found is that there is so much fear of being alone. Yet at the same time, yet at the same time, clients tell me that I never felt so alone in my marriage. Wow, think about it, how contradictory we can be. So the work is always finding out who you are and the life you want to live first. And then to see, can the other party complement or align with that? So I went a little bit on that, just the beauty and power through this journey. I'm not trying to beautify, the divorce is like empowering and great. I mean, of course it's tough. But again, I think back to our beginning to say, you can make a choice. Your choice is
Yes.
not to control how the other person behave, how the other person love or not love you, how they leave the marriage, right? With
Mhm.
grace or maturity, or acting, to be honest, like a giant baby or a big ass sometimes, and pardon my language, but we can control how we behave and how we respond and
Yes.
the work we wanted to do on ourselves.
I mean, it is a journey. The journey is very difficult to navigate and it's challenging. You do have your ups and downs. It's not a smooth ride, but where you are empowered is you have the ability to choose how you're going to go through it. Where you're also empowered is that you actually have a lot of freedom again to make that choice and that decision. You're right. When it comes to being in a relationship or not being in a relationship, people fear the same thing, whether they are married or single, is that we fear being
Yeah.
alone, right? Being alone because we don't have anything concrete to identify with. It's so, like you said, when you're in a relationship, I am so and so's partner, girlfriend, wife, right? When you are working for an organization, this is the company I work for. Whenever you ask a
Yeah.
person, tell me about yourself, they always tell
What do you
you
do?
where they what is your
Yeah.
occupation?
Yeah.
I got so stuck on that same summer after I got divorced and then I was fired. And I remember bumping into somebody on a walk during COVID and it was in the neighborhood. And they said, "Oh, are you new in this neighborhood?" So we chatted a little bit, social distance chatting. And it was nice to see another human being. He asked me, so he said, "So what do you do? So what do you do?" I was,
I'm my own boss.
I was stumped because I thought to myself, I used to be able to tell people what to do. If honestly, I answered honestly and I said, I'm actually not doing anything right now, which
Mm-hmm,
sounded so
mm-hmm.
boring. I thought to myself, this is so boring. Like, how can you not be doing anything right now? You used to work and you did this, you did that, and now you don't. So I had to reframe my identity, and it was no
Yeah.
longer who I work for. It was no longer who I was married to or who I was partnered with, but my true identity was, who am
Mm-hmm,
I? And you're right,
mm-hmm.
what do I do? Right. So that was
And
different.
getting in touch
Yeah.
with that lost self takes time
Yes.
to figure out, because we've been like on this grind for so long. uh I love what you share about this huge identity transition and really reinventing ourselves again. So you talked about you had this conversation with your 10 years later yourself on the
Yeah.
patio,
Teach
right?
yourself being, yeah.
Now looking back, what would you tell yourself when you, at the time, 4 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago, because we all know this
Mhm.
entangling, uncoupling takes time. What
Yeah.
would you tell her at the time? What advice would you give her, or what would you say to her?
If I was to be able to go back into that moment of it talking to me sitting on the porch, I would have given the same advice. I would have said to myself then that you're going to be just fine. And I'm going to bet on you because I know that this is hard, but you're going to come out the other side a champion. Because I was betting on myself and I was believing in myself. I think that's the part that we miss a lot of. We depend on other people believing in us, that we forget to believe in ourselves. And I think that takes you further. And I would have given myself that same advice. I would have also maybe added, you're not going to believe me when I tell you this now, because 3 years, 4 years doesn't sound like a lot of time. But I will tell myself that you're never going to be the same person year over year, and you're going to keep proving yourself, right? And so that I see is true now, because every time I look back, I see that I'm a different person than I was last year and the year before. I'm absolutely a different person than when I first set out on this divorce journey in 2020. But even like a year ago, when I said, when I look back and people say, "Wow, you used to be married to this person. You used to be this wife, this mother, living in this house." To me, it felt like it was a very strange Netflix series that I was watching, because I can't
Mm,
identify with that person. I cannot identify with who I was in that marriage anymore, because I've updated my version over the last 4 years that you can't even recognize that I was that same person. The core of
mm-hmm.
who I was never fully expressed in the marriage. So when we talk about being lonely, I would say that my ex-husband only knew less, he
Mm,
probably knew like maybe 40% of who I am. The other
mm.
60% were suppressed, they were compromised, they were sacrificed, they were just silenced. That's the other thing too, is that when I discovered liberosis, which is eating popcorn for dinner if I feel like it, taking a shower at 2 a.m. if I feel like it, the other thing, the other
Yeah.
thing that I realized too was that I didn't have to be that same person, and I could find my voice again. And
I
that
was
is
gonna
very,
say, you stole my line.
yeah, I found my
you were
voice.
rediscovering your voice, and you were
Yeah,
so brave to embrace that and just
yeah,
let everything unfold. That's a question that I always ask my clients is, were you not be able to be in your marriage?
yeah,
What couldn't you express in your marriage? And what would you like to express now? So that's
yes.
very empowering. We chatted yesterday. Let's talk about the iPhone upgrade. We talked about
What a metaphor.
because the key of a reinvention is that you focus your intention on your own development. It's so
Yeah.
key in every area. But when we think about in the corporate world, we think about,
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to learn Excel or I'm going to learn a new technology or tool. But it's far
Yes.
beyond that. Then I don't know what's the iPhone out there now. It's like iPhone
Yeah.
upgrades every.
From 15, I think, is going to be launched. They launch a
Okay.
new version every
Yeah.
year. So I think for anybody that's
iPhone,
joined,
yeah. You know
yeah,
what? I should
that's,
call Apple. It's like, hey, would you like to sponsor my podcast? Because we mentioned you.
no. So this is no way endorsing iPhone, but for sure, yesterday, Lisa, you and I had this conversation, and it just organically grew that way, where I said that because you were checking in on me, and I thought that was really great. Like, where are you? And it forces me to actually sit down and reflect, right? Because we get so busy that we don't stop to think about what it is that we're going through. And I don't want to be in that rut. So I'm thankful for friends that remind me and check in on me, because then I stop and I think there are things that I want to accomplish. There are goals that I want. I don't want to forget about them. I don't want to be stuck in a marriage to myself where I don't do things that bring out the best in me. Right? And one of the metaphors that I mentioned was, my goodness, like we are so locked into updating everything. When my laptop tells me that I have a software update, oh my goodness, I'm updating it, because heaven forbid that I can't get into a Zoom next, meeting next time because I didn't update. And my phone, same thing. There is, iPhone updates, like all the software updates. We take time to improve all these devices around us because we want to make our lives
Gadgets.
easier. Yeah, gadgets, but we don't think about updating our version, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
why I made a joke where I said, Lisa, I know that I'm embarking on more changes, and I know that by the end of this year, I'm going to be very different than when I started off in January 2024. And
Yeah.
even now,
Cindy
halfway,
5.0.
yeah. So I said, it'll be 5 years since I was divorced. I believe every single year I get a different version of myself,
Yeah.
because I want to evolve and I want to keep changing and be better. I have goals. Every year I'm launching a new version of myself now. And I don't want people to give up on that. You're always excited for the next iPhone version to come out, but I want people to be excited for the next version of you coming out, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I am working towards my release in 2025. So it will be Cindy 5.0. Right now, I think it's Cindy 6.6. I'm halfway through this
Yeah.
year, but I will be reaching that, and I embrace it. I don't
Yeah.
have to
Thank you
say
for sharing that. We're in such a disposable culture, right? So, oh my God, there's a
yes.
new iPhone. Like we go purchase that, or I have kids, right? They are always in this like new shining
Yeah.
things. But we really think about, oh my God, where do I need to upgrade? Whether it's
Hmm.
skill or emotional management or just some spiritual pursuit,
Spiritual.
whatever that is.
Yes.
It's so important, or maybe physical, right? And going to the gym, you don't have to. I'm just saying that's the only way,
Hmm.
is because we are a holistic being. And if we want to reinvent ourselves, a new identity, we have to look at ourselves from different
Yeah.
aspects, right? Financial management as well. In my coaching program, we actually this month we're focusing on that. So many people don't. And because a lot of our fear and
Yeah.
stress actually comes from money and whether we want to face it or not. Thank you for saying that. So everyone start to upgrade your software and hardware of yourself. We've been chatting a lot. I have a last question. Let's talk about love. How did this divorce journey impact your perception or perspective about love?
Okay. Well, I have not been, when we talk about divorce, people usually get very bitter, they get very jaded, and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't believe in love anymore. What I discovered, and I don't really label love the same way. So I see that love comes in variations, and how we can love, whether it's loving your family members, your friends, loving partner, a husband, boyfriend. I see that there are variations of love that can be expressed, because that's one thing I discovered myself is like in my heart, I know that I have the capacity to love. And I have gone through a broken heart with the divorce, and I have gone through a broken heart with having the strain of the relationship with my children. I've gone through broken heart of friends and other family members that just disappear and move out of your life because of the divorce. It impacts other people in different ways too. But it hasn't changed. So I know that my heart is always bursting with love. And I this is something that I also thought that for myself, it was a choice, and not everybody wants to choose that. I was not interested in getting into a relationship anytime soon after my divorce. And people thought it's because I gave up on love, and that I was jaded,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a really bad outlook on it, and I didn't believe in it. But that's not what it was. I wanted to spend time loving myself more, and I wanted to make sure that when I do get into a relationship, this was my thought initially, that it was going to be more fulfilling. And I wanted to know what I was getting out of that. So I had these ideas about love in the future, and I wasn't rushing into it. But I also felt I didn't want to do the same thing I did before, which was I was in a marriage for a long time, and I didn't want to go back being in a relationship again. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to do the same thing. So when we talk about dating myself, my 1.0, my 2.0 version was me, but not necessarily in a relationship. I did explore a relationship for a year. That only proved to me that I do have the capacity to love, and falling in love is awesome, guys. I think that I can do it again over and over. Now, when I think of variations of love, I don't create those criterias anymore. I don't create a
Mm-hmm.
checklist where I say, I don't have a boyfriend app where I say, if you meet all these requirements, now you can be in a
Mm-hmm.
long term relationship with me. I look at it as people are going to come and go in my life. I don't know how
Yeah.
long they're going to be there. I don't know how much time I have to love them, but I'll be thankful that when people come into my life and they bring love, no matter what that time span looks like, I will look at it as a gift. And some gifts I just don't question. So that's where I sit with that topic.
Mm. I love it. I can totally relate. It's the how multi-dimensional love can be. One
Yes.
is two is when you get in touch with yourself, you're surprised your capacity to love is
Yeah.
so vast. I mean, I'm not talking just about intimate relationship love, but to everyone around you, your kids, and it's crazy. Last point is that again, we have so much fear of being alone, right? And when you get out of a relationship, there is this desire or inclination. Oh my God, if I go be with someone else, things would be better, right? I really commend you. And also, a lot of people is that spending time with yourself first, because you just ended some kind of relationship, whether you were married for 5 or 10 years and with a significant person. It's so important to figure out what you want and who you are.
Yeah.
It takes some time, and that's okay. The last part I wanted to say, and maybe that's another episode we can do, is that if you decide to get on an online dating
We're
app or
gonna turn
something,
this
because
into
that's
Netflix story.
I know, Visa Goose Netflix of
I
online
know.
dating, and so do not open the first line with "what do you do?" That's the most boring thing. Gentlemen, like you could say out there, say something interesting to help you stand out. Let's stop being boring. Joking aside, oh my God, online dating, that's like definitely another episode. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask, but you feel like it's so important to share, whether it's any suggestions to people who are in the thick of it, or maybe they've finished their legal process of the divorce, but still don't feel like they are themselves yet. They're still navigating that. Any advice or suggestion or just thoughts to share?
Something that I've learned going through this is that many people will want to help you solve your problem. People that care about you, people that see you struggling, they want to solve your problem. And for you, it's your own personal journey. People can be there to lend support and people can be there to lend ideas. But I don't think we should ever feel pressure to listen to advice. We should ever feel pressure to not acknowledge the feelings that we have. For example, the toxic positivity that people will try to inject because they're trying to be helpful. When you're feeling down, valid. Allow yourself those moments to acknowledge it. I can say that there is no playbook for this. There's no book that's going to help you get through this other than yourself. In those moments, give yourself permission to feel sadness, bitterness, anger,
whatever.
Fear. Give yourself permission to be all of that. And don't deny yourself that, because this is your journey and you will go through it and come through it very different than anyone else.
Yeah, your journey will be different and only you know it, and it's your internal experience that matters, not external reflection or whatever. I really love that. Also, it's a time if you can get some external support who are not connected with you somehow, some mutual support, whether it's a coach or counselor. It's so it can be so helpful because you want someone who are detached from everything, right? And especially if you're someone who's been through this journey. But self-love.
Yes, I was going to say, like, people will laugh about how much I love myself, and this is why it's hard to be in a relationship with me, I think, because you're competing with me. I love myself too much, and I take care of myself to the point where, if we talk about a personal trainer for my body, I have my own therapist for my mind, and I'm through a lot of things spiritually, and I learn from people philosophy-wise. So I can gain wisdom that way, and I love it. I embrace all of those moments. And it was okay to not always be perfect. I remember people telling me, "Oh, cheer up, you cheer up." Like, how do I cheer up?
And another thing that I hear a lot of my clients, family and friends is like, "Oh my God, it's been X amount of years. Like, you should be okay now. Like, just get over it." Or, "Oh my, he's already married," or whatever that is.
I know.
What I always say to encourage these people is like, it's your healing journey. And no one can rush you and give you advice and to tell you when to be okay. These people, like, we need to set some boundaries, be like, no, thank you. That's some work too. But you're right. It's your journey and you're in it and you know it. Just like a marriage, right? From the outsider, you could be the perfect couple, right? You got perfect jobs, vacation home, vacationing, and two beautiful kids, the Canadian dream per se. And internally, you're like, damn, we're just on autopilot. What's going on, right? So it's the same thing that your healing journey is. I thank you for bringing that to the front. Like, only you know it.
Exactly. And I just want to say to people that it's okay to have negative feelings about this. It doesn't mean that you're not healing from it. To allow yourself those negative feelings out is acknowledging that you are actually experiencing everything holistically. I was tired of people telling me to you're better than that, take the high road, like be the better person. If I was spewing bitterness, there were times where I thought, why do I have to be the better person?
I just like say bad things. So, and the concept of I'm taking the high road, because a lot of people was telling me this, and I was like, oh, at the beginning I felt good about it. I was like, yeah, I am taking the high road, and maybe I am. And so inherently, that statement means the other side is taking the low road somehow, and that's judgmental. And we don't know whatever that person, the decision they made at the beginning. We say we don't know. Right? They have their internal experience. If we've lived their life, maybe we would make the same decisions. There is no need to judge anyone in this, but just really focusing on ourselves and what matters to us. And also, you talked about in this journey that less and less we're seeking for external validation, which is very hard. Because we're brought up this way, right? Your job defines you, your marriage defines you, your parents or whatever, your car, your phone, the more we can remove this, the more we can give less power to this external validation and seeking internal validation, your real growth will come out of it. And that's real power, real powerful.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. On
Yeah,
that note, on that high note, where can people find you, Cindy?
I am on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am not
I'll
as
add your LinkedIn
active.
profile.
Yeah, I have my LinkedIn profile, and you can always message me through LinkedIn as well. It's all open to anybody that wants to contact me or connect with me. I'm not as social media savvy, and I don't do a lot of posting that way, which
Pretty
is fine.
savvy,
But
I'd say.
I put it on through my LinkedIn. So yeah, please connect with me. I would be more than happy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
share a conversation.
Cindy teaches at Conasol College, but she also has her own consulting firm. She does a lot of corporate training on corporate
Oh,
culture or
leadership,
communication,
leadership,
leadership.
yeah, workplace culture. For me, it's all about how people treat each other, how people work together, and that harmonization is really important for me. You can probably see I pull that into relationships, I pull that into people that I meet. Honestly, it just comes from a place where I feel like I have a huge capacity to love. So, I mean, connecting with Lisa came from a place of love, and connecting with anybody that I meet now does come initially from that place where I look at them and I think, who are you? What's your story? And what can you teach me?
Not what you do. What do you do? Nope. Thank you so much, Cindy, for sharing so openly and accepting my invitation to come here to
Yeah,
sharing all of your
I'm
wisdom
happy
and
to share.
experience and so real. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we reach out anytime to me or Cindy, and we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks